Hello and welcome. My name is Will Steele. I am the host of the podcast Free to Lead, Journeys of Leaders, driven by passion, inspired by purpose. I'm excited today. We have Reggie James. He's a B2B growth marketing specialist based in the United Kingdom. So he's a fellow Brit, is into tech and software, and he's launched two successful startups himself. He advises CEOs, CMOs, and CROs and is into marketing, sales, and I'll leave him to explain all of it. But I think we're in for a great story today to listen to the journey from India to the UK. So, Reggie, welcome to the show.
Will, thank you so much. That's quite an introduction. But yes, I really like when you said he's into computers and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Yes, no, it's an absolute pleasure to be on your show.
thank you. And we have lots of different kind of people listening to the show, lots of leaders, lots of people interested in leaders and leaders' journeys. So, you told me earlier you're from India and now you're in London and you went via Glasgow. And, you know, how,
Yes.
how did you get, tell me a little bit about where you came
Yeah,
here, what your journey was to where you are
it's
today.
thanks, Will. As you say, I was born in India in the north in Punjab, which many people don't know. And my parents were in the medical profession. Mum was a nurse, dad was an administrator, but he worked a system in a hospital base there, which was run by a lot of Scottish doctors and nurses based in Glasgow. And they needed someone who could run this system, and he knew how to do it. And so they kind of shipped him over, but they also needed nurses. And so there we were back in the 70s, show my age,
Yes.
arrived in Glasgow from a very sunny India in November. And one of my first memories as a child um, is it's not a great memory, but it's funny because we kind of used to joke about it because mum was crying because she'd never experienced so much cold
Mm.
uh, in her life. And I remember just saying, "Mum, why are you crying?" She said, "It's so cold. I've never ever experienced anything so bitter." Um, and that was our sort of introduction to Bonnie, Scotland, and a city that I absolutely loved. And grew up there, did my schooling there, and then at 15, really learned a lot from my dad because he was in the NHS, the Scottish NHS, and then somebody offered him an opportunity to become self-employed, which was a huge risk, and sell life insurance to the Asian community out there in Glasgow, which is what he did. And he did incredibly well. Very dedicated, very focused, an absolute grafter. And he did that. And he did so well that the company, which is now merged into something else, used to be called Royal Insurance, moved him to the Midlands, to Leicester, which is where I kind of grew up as a teenager and did my first kind of roles there, if you like, and learned a lot from him and actually went into insurance, became an insurance salesman myself in those early days. So, and then, maneuvering myself down to London. So that's my very early years and learning a lot from my parents who had a very, very strong influence on me. And we went from everything up and down. Dad had a business that he invested in. He put virtually everything, and we still had a house in Scotland when we were in the Midlands, and the business failed. I remember him sitting us down. We were quite young and doing quite well, and him saying, "Dad, saying, listen, we're going to have to make some changes. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to do that." And it really had a toll on him. But he didn't have the skills when I look back on it, or the capacity to deal with it. He didn't have the strategies. And it kind of was a really, really tough time, but it had a big impact on me. And he came back from it. He went back into the insurance business
Yeah.
and again did really well. So It's a success to failure to success, and he learned so much from that
Yeah.
particular time.
Yeah.
And it kind of paved the way for a lot of my journeys as well. So
Well, interesting. So a lot of the work I do with people is it's things like that happen. We make decisions and we don't realize it, but they
mm,
shape. So can you see any decision you made right then when you saw your dad like that and what happened?
yeah, as I say, it had a big impact on me, and I've not sort of had a chance to properly overanalyze it. It's interesting how this has come about, and we're talking about it. I don't think I've spoken about that for quite some time, but the impact was one where it was him coming back. It was when he was low, it was painful,
Mm.
but it was his determination to pick himself up again and move forward
Yeah.
into a going back to something that he knew very well, but having to fight a lot of things, people who he thought were friends but had kind of abandoned him. But he had a real steely determination to actually get through and get back to where he was, which was, you know, one of the top sales guys within the industry back in the day. And he did it, and won a lot of clients off the back of it because he was a genuine guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was the kind of
What did
impact.
it mean to you? What did you think to yourself?
I think it was more subliminal, Will. I think it was like it was an impact, and had he sort of just totally crumbled, I think what he was a very honest and authentic man. So he didn't hide it from us. He, in the kind of Indian culture, sometimes everything's about being upfront, being successful on the outside, and people could be dying on the inside. But he was very, very, certainly with his family, was very open, honest, and sort of just went straight into telling us the way things were, quite pragmatic as people were in those days, and kind of um, said it how it was and how
Mm.
things were going to be and what he was going to do to get out of it. And we were, because he was so honest, we kind of got right behind him. And I think for him, knowing that his family were there, as young as we were, behind him, gave him that extra kick that he needed, because he just knew that there was that group of people behind him. So
Yeah.
that's, I think, the biggest impact.
Well, what was your lesson from it? Or what was your takeaway? What was your
Um, I
yeah
think my takeaway,
moment?
good question. I think there's lots of things if I try and unravel that. One is his honesty,
Mhm.
um, and his pragmatism. Two, um, knowing that and needing that backup, if you like, from his family, that you don't always get, and there's no guarantee because people are different. But because he'd always been there, because there was a lot of love there, I think he led kind of from the heart. He was not there was very little BS with him. And I remember years later meeting his manager, very, very successful guy, um, who's sadly no longer with us, but I ended up ironically working with this guy for later on in life. I remember him saying, "Your dad was very honest and very real. And that's why people bought from him.
Mm.
He never sold. People bought
Yeah.
from him, and
Yeah.
people trust him." So I think those were the things that came across: love, trust, honesty, and
Yes.
being his authentic self, even if it meant to the detriment of getting a quick buck.
Yeah. Yeah. And then so we've gotten so far, I think, to about teenage years. Then you moved to London, and then what? How did you end up in IT? Given you weren't in IT
Well,
sales.
it's a weird one. It's so I'm on the marketing side of things, so as opposed to really IT. But I as I said, I got into the insurance business. I worked commission only um, for an insurance firm down in London. Stayed with a family friend and cousin, and who really gave me a sort of step up and stayed with them in the wilds of Ilford and Essex.
Mm.
And from that, I really learnt my trade because I started selling commission only on the phone. And then I learnt the ability that I realized that I was quite good at selling concepts. And I ended up joining an advertising, doing what they call ad sales, selling ad space, if you like, in magazines. Progressed from that into actually working for a big business publisher, a big Dutch business publisher. And that publisher was the biggest publisher of IT magazines in London. It's a company called VNU. And then I joined a company called Ziff Davis, which again was one of their rivals. And ultimately that company is now completely changed into what was Incisive Media. And I don't actually know what it is today, but it was an incredible time. I was in my early 20s. The world was my oyster, no fear, and selling on the phone. Every phone call was just a joy, working with some great mentors, great salespeople, and learning the art of persuasion when you're selling a concept. And that had a real big impact on me in terms of how really you can, if you get a deep understanding of what people are after and how you can help them, and marry the two together and have certain skill sets, is a way. It was all about communication. And excuse me. So from that, this communication field, I got into marketing and ended up working for, when this new thing called the internet was coming along, I ended up working for one of the biggest search engines in the world before Google, called Alta Vista, and which became part of Yahoo. So that's how I got into this whole thing. Realized very quickly we were selling to advertising agencies for big brands like Hewlett Packard and Compaq back in the day, and realized that the agencies that they were working with really didn't have a good grasp of search or search marketing. And that's how I ended up starting Digital Clarity, which started off as a search agency first. So that's how I got into this particular side. And really from that, the technology piece comes from sitting down with an engineer from Alta Vista saying, if there was a way that people could use Google search in a more intuitive way where they could manage search campaigns better. And he said, well, let's try and plan something out. And from that, we developed a piece of technology that was used by about 40% of media planning buying agencies in London, called Digital Clarity Storm, DC Storm. And that is how we sold that to a Japanese business called Rakuten. That was there was a stint in Singapore where I started with a startup as well, where I was part of a startup with the guys from Ericsson, where I sold that as well, that business, but that was part of a public company. And yeah, so that was the second startup that I sold, and got on with the agency, which is where we developed to where we are today, which is an advisory consultancy business, advising CEOs, CMOs, and the C-suite on how to fix the gaps in their marketing to create a growth engine for them to scale their businesses using a variety of different tools, including what we're building now as an AI stack as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's a way of actually communicating the value directly to their customers.
Yeah.
In a very, very clever way. So that's how we got there.
Yeah, good. And what, if you look back as a human being, then what's the biggest challenges you faced in your leadership?
I think one of the biggest times we built the company up to quite a size. I think there was 25 of us at one point. And one of the companies that we were dealing with at the time owed us quite a lot of money. And we were, at the time, looking after the buying of their advertising. And then that company went bust. but we were lumbered with the debt.
Yeah.
And that was a major, major blow at that time. So that was the beginning of a number of different mishaps that happened. People used to say, they're like buses, three come along at once, sort of thing.
Yes.
And there were lots of different things that just kind of happened one by one. And that was one of the biggest impacts. I just had a young son at the time.
Yeah.
I was, my wife was pregnant with my second child. We've got two boys, and suddenly being lumbered as a young SME business with a huge debt almost overnight was a very, very stressful thing. I don't think I'd ever experienced anything like it.
Yeah.
So I had to overcome that. Well, one of the things was to take a bit of a step back and look at the problem, and try and I think I spoke to a couple of people about it, but there was one particular seasoned individual who, again, is no longer with us, but he had the war wounds. He'd been through it. And he said to me, enjoy this experience. And I didn't understand what the hell he was talking about. I was like thinking, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose the house. I'm going to have to sell the kids, do whatever I've got to do. And it was one of those kind of bizarre situations where I just remember him just saying to me, he goes, really soak this in. Think about how you're feeling. And I said, well, I feel awful. I feel like, I feel terrible. And he goes, of course you are. But think about it, and then let's talk about it tomorrow. Because I was saying I won't be able to sleep. I'm going to have to lay off the team. All of those kind of things. But looking back on it now, it was a very, very interesting thing that what he said, and we dissected this monster and worked out strategies and ways of how to deal with that, which is what we did over the next sort of 6 months to a year. And it's surprising when you speak to people who know what they're talking about, people who've got skills in these certain areas, people like yourself, Will, who have been through scenarios, challenges, and can sit down with someone and calmly, help them understand what they're going through, help them devise a strategy to deal with those things, and maybe help them really think about what is actually going on here, and how real is that? Because it almost felt surreal, if that makes sense. And all the other challenges that have happened throughout the years, Will, it's allowed me to look at them and then take a step back and then really look at them and look at what, because everything suddenly is big, making mountains out of molehills. Thinking it's the end, and really it's not. So
just for those listening, right? See, as a ontological transformational coach, if that makes any sense to anybody listening, what that man gave you there was just be with the experience, and once you've been with it for a while, it subsides, and then you start to have some freedom to think and look. There's no point trying to look while you're all reacting. So he gave you a little bit of space to be with it and experience it, and you didn't die. In fact, that's what makes you stronger. The pain of change or the pain of hardship, if you can stay with it, don't give up. As long as you don't give up and you stay with it and you push through it, you come out stronger. You learn something. You learn a valuable lesson. Unfortunately, it seems to be in life, the most valuable lessons hurt the most. It seems to be that way.
Yes.
It's a philosophy that, okay, well, I'm going to learn something from this, really valuable. And it sounds like you did.
Will, that's a very, very good point you make. Spot on. I saw something recently from it was Mike Tyson, I remember him saying, it's a great line. I mean, what you're just saying there reminds me of two great quotes. Excuse me. One of them from Winston Churchill about success, going from failure to failure with I'm trying to remember the
No
actual,
loss of enthusiasm.
without the loss of enthusiasm. And the other one was as you're kind of touching on with Mike Tyson, where he said everyone has a strategy until you get punched in the face.
Yes.
And it's kind of like a suddenly everything goes out the window.
That's right.
Everything, best laid plans and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it really is. And I'm mad into sport, and I some of the most successful and most profound quotes I've ever heard of from sports players, you know, like Michael Jordan talking about all the shots he's missed. He's had the opportunity to take a winning shot to win the league and everything. He's missed them. They relied on him and he missed it. And it's from all of those thousands of shots that he's missed is why he is successful.
Yeah.
And it just is, it's so powerful, but you'd never realize it at the time that these life lessons are there. They're all around us, really. That they seem like the most worst time in your life.
Yeah, well, just to kind of really capture that for somebody listening, going through a tough time, maybe they just hit a big failure or someone hasn't paid that. A lot of businesses fail by debitors just defaulting, you know, and they can't pay the people and they can't keep the lights on, and that's what has most. Oh, sorry, I don't know if it's most, but a lot of businesses fail. The cash flow
Absolutely, yeah.
that causes. So, what would you say to someone going through something like that right now? One of the people listening.
I'd say don't run away from what's going on. I think a lot of people, especially if they're new in business, there's a very high statistic of new businesses that kind of don't make it. And even those that do make it in the second year don't really get that far. And if you're there in your second year and you're doing well, then you've come a long way. You're part of a very special club.
Yeah.
And but even those who don't make it, I think the number one thing is don't hide away from the challenges you're going through. Look at them, embrace them, understand where you are, and that none of this is final. None of this is, you know, you can, if this business doesn't happen, then there's always something else. This may not be your time. This may not be your thing. But I think sometimes one has to look at, almost remove yourself from the situation. This is my own personal view, and almost look at yourself looking at it. Because when I've had time to reflect back, it's almost like a film. It's like a movie where I'm looking at myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. Yeah, of course.
And it's kind of, so I've kind of, in a way, I suppose I've got a choice of the next part of what I do. Do I take a left or do I take a right? Do I
pivot.
go up or do I go down? So, and if I do make a decision, it's going to take me on a journey, and I have to, you know, but it's the best decision I can make with knowing what I know at the time.
Yeah.
So I just think the more, this is why when you meet, you know, or you come across like mega successful people, they've had more failures than anyone else.
Yeah.
And they've, because they know, you know, and I'll just add that I think when you meet seasoned individuals, they help you avoid some of those bombs, those landmines, if you like.
Yes.
So they give you that confidence to sort of maybe handhold you through some of those things, which is why I always think that it's very hard. Nobody ever makes it on their own. You need someone to help you.
Well, that's a great piece of advice for those people who, you know, do it on their own and knuckle down and work harder and harder and harder and end up burning themselves out. That there are people, there's mentors, there's like myself, coaches, there's masterminds you can join. There is support, and it's critical to be successful to surround yourself with the support you need.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's lots of different avenues. I think one of the things I learned a little bit very, very late was that you do need having a coach, having a mentor, having someone around you and a support network, even if that's like a business club or a group where you can sit down and share some of those up, how you're feeling about things, how you're doing things.
Yes.
I think if I was to go back, one should never look back with regret as such, but try and learn from those experiences. But if I was to go back, I think I would have taken someone on a lot earlier, someone with more experience to sort of help me, be it a coach, be it a mentor, be it someone, a non-exec or whatever. So I'm a big proponent of that. And to those that are going through it, to answer your question, are going through a tough time, I would say, maybe seek someone out. There's lots of people willing to help. You don't have to suffer on your own, and just have that conversation.
Yeah. And, and also in the context, I mean, I just finished my book. It's not coming out for quite a while, a couple of months maybe.
Interesting.
And it's on authentic leadership. And I had to put a chapter in on failure because it's so important. It's so important how to deal with failure, the lessons in failure, the it sounds crazy, but the possibility in failure, that it is part of the game. So you have to embrace it. You have to find a powerful way to deal with it. And it's not hang your head in shame. Oh my God, I failed, like it seems to be for people. It's not, I really tried this and it didn't work. Okay, well, now what? Now what we're going to do? That didn't work. Let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try that, So I really appreciate you having the candidacy to share what's really gone on with you, because I think that's more valuable for people listening who are dealing with their stuff than someone coming, "Oh, I'm wonderful," Well, they probably wouldn't go on my show because, I have to, I have to, I have to be inspired by who's coming on the show. And you've really done a great job there, Reggie. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. And, how could people get in touch with you if they wanted some support from you in your business as well? You're
Sure.
in your marketing with your expertise all the way back from the beginning of Google and Google Ads and all that stuff. How do people find out about you, contact you?
So there's a number of ways, and thank you, Will. I've really enjoyed this. I'd love to do it again sometime. And so you can, you can just type my name into LinkedIn, Reggie James, or type in Reggie James Digital Clarity. I also, for those of you in the States, Digital Clarity, the marketing consultancy, is a wholly owned subsidiary of DBMM Group, which trades on the OTC market. It's a great way for companies or for individuals to invest in the public space, in what is a very fast moving space in terms of both marketing and AI, and the combination of those and how that's helping people drive marketing and sales. So Reggie James at Digital Clarity, and Reggie James at DBMM Group. So wonderful. Thank you very much, Will.
Yeah, very, very welcome. It's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, Will.
All right.